some sort of, responsibility because I'm in this thing with him. You know what I'm saying? He's my artist, and he was supposed to go to London.
Before we unveil this secret, the following is for educational and entertainment purposes. Viewers' discretion is strongly advised.
And just say, yo, please let me go. That ain't an easy thing, not with him.
Back in 1993, Faith Evans made the move to LA and started working as a backup singer for Al B. Sure, it wasn't long before she caught Diddy's eye. He invited her to do some background vocals, and after just one studio session, Diddy signed her on the spot, making her the first female artist on his Bad Boy label.
The camera rolls in a dimly lit recording studio, 1997. Faith Evans sits behind the microphone, her voice trembling as she lays down vocals for what would become I'll Be Missing You, a tribute to her late husband, Biggie. But across the glass partition, Sean Diddy Combs watches with an intensity that goes beyond professional interest. What happened in those late-night sessions would remain hidden for decades, until now. But before we dive into this story that shook the foundations of hip-hop royalty, I need to ask you something. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind closed doors when celebrities are grieving? When the cameras stop rolling and the public facade drops? What you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about loyalty, grief, and the price of fame. Hit that subscribe button right now because what I'm about to reveal has never been told in this detail before, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment of this. Picture this. It's March 1997, just weeks after Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., was gunned down in Los Angeles. The hip-hop world is in mourning, but nowhere is the pain more raw than in the heart of Faith Evans, his widow, and Sean Combs, his best friend and business partner. But here's what the public never knew. Faith wasn't just grieving a husband, she was drowning in guilt. You see, her marriage to Biggie wasn't the fairy tale the media portrayed. They'd been separated, living apart, trying to work through issues that seemed impossible to resolve. The night before he left for Los Angeles, they'd had their biggest fight yet. Can you imagine carrying that weight? The last conversation with your husband being an argument, and then never getting the chance to make it right? How do you live with that kind of regret? Faith would later tell her closest friends that she felt like she was suffocating. Every breath reminded her of words she wished she could take back, apologies she'd never get to make. And in that emotional storm, she found herself in Daddy's house recording studio, night after night, trying to channel her pain into something meaningful. Now let's talk about Diddy for a moment. Sean Combs wasn't just mourning a friend, he was carrying the crushing weight of responsibility. As the head of Bad Boy Records, some people whispered that he could have done more to protect Biggie. The East Coast-West Coast beef that ultimately claimed Christopher's life had Diddy's fingerprints all over it, at least in the court of public opinion. Have you ever felt responsible for something terrible happening to someone you care about? That guilt that eats at you from the inside? That's exactly what Diddy was experiencing, magnified by millions of watching eyes and judging voices. The studio became their sanctuary, but also their prison. Night after night, Faith would arrive around 9 p.m., long after most of the staff had gone home. Diddy would already be there, playing beats, searching for something that could capture the enormity of their loss. But here's where the story gets complicated, and I need you to pay close attention because this is where everything starts to unravel. The first few sessions were purely professional. Faith would lay down vocals, Diddy would produce, and they'd both pretend they weren't falling apart inside. But grief has a way of stripping away pretenses, doesn't it?
In August 1995 and became a huge hit, thanks to singles like You Used to Love Me and Soon as I Get Home. The album went platinum, selling 1.5 million copies. Around that time, Faith and Biggie welcomed their son, Christopher Wallace Jr., but their relationship was already on shaky ground. Rumors were flying that Biggie was cheating on her with multiple women, including Lil' Kim. In response, Faith allegedly got her revenge by having an affair with Biggie's rival, Tupac. This move dragged Faith right into the middle of the infamous East Coast versus West Coast hip-hop war, which ended in tragedy.
It ended in tragedy, really? Things like this makes you raw, vulnerable, desperate for any kind of connection that makes the pain bearable. Marcus, one of the sound engineers who was there those nights, later described the atmosphere as electric but dangerous. He told me in an exclusive interview, and this is the first time he's spoken publicly about this, that he could feel the tension building between Faith and Diddy like a storm gathering strength. It wasn't just musical chemistry, Marcus revealed. There was something else happening in that room, something that made everyone else uncomfortable enough to find reasons to leave early. But what was really happening during those late-night sessions? What were Faith and Diddy talking about when the microphones weren't recording? Let me paint you a picture that will make your skin crawl with the intensity of it all. Picture Faith, emotionally shattered, trying to sing about missing someone while the guilt of their last fight tears her apart. Every note she hits is laced with regret. Every word carries the weight of unfinished conversations. And Diddy, watching her pour her soul out, feeling his own guilt mirror hers, begins to see her not as his friend's widow, but as the only other person who truly understands the depth of his pain.
You gotta do that. I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom. But I make no excuses. My behavior on it, inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now.
Do you see how dangerous this situation was becoming? Two broken people, united by grief and guilt, spending hours alone together in an intimate setting. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash. You can see the disaster coming, but you're powerless to stop it. But here's what makes this story even more complex. Faith wasn't just dealing with her personal grief. She was also navigating the brutal politics of the music industry as a newly widowed woman. Suddenly, every man in her life was viewed with suspicion. Was he genuinely trying to help, or was he trying to take advantage of her vulnerability? And the whispers had already started. Industry insiders were questioning whether Faith could handle the pressure, whether she had the strength to continue her career without Biggie's protection and guidance. Some executives were already planning to drop her from their labels, seeing her as damaged goods in an industry that devours the weak. Can you imagine the pressure? Trying to grieve while fighting to save your career? Trying to be strong for your children while feeling like you're drowning inside? This is where Diddy's support became crucial, but also where the lines began to blur dangerously. He wasn't just her producer anymore. He became her protector, her advocate, the one person who seemed to truly understand what she was going through. But protection can become possession, can it? And understanding can become intimacy when you're not careful about boundaries. The sessions grew longer. What started as 3-hour recording blocks stretched to 6 hours, then 8, then 12. Faith would arrive with puffy eyes from crying, and Diddy would already have coffee waiting for her, tissues ready, a shoulder to lean on when the weight became too much. And this is where I need to tell you about the night that changed everything. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you were about to cross a line, but the emotional pull was too strong to resist? Where logic and emotion were at war, and emotion was winning. Because that's exactly what was building between Faith and Diddy, and everyone around them could see it except them. It was April 15th, 1997, a date that would be burned into both of their memories forever. Faith had been struggling with a particular verse all week, a section of the song where she was supposed to express hope for the future. But every time she tried to sing it, she would break down. "How can I sing about hope when I feel hopeless?" she confided to Diddy that night. "How can I tell people it gets better when I wake up every morning wishing I didn't?" Now, pause for a moment and think about this. Here's a woman, barely in her 20s, dealing with widow's grief, public scrutiny, industry pressure, and financial uncertainty all at once. Is it any wonder she was struggling to find hope? Diddy, watching her pain, felt something shift inside him. Later, he would describe it as the moment when his protective instincts overrode his professional judgment. He left the producer's booth and entered the vocal booth where Faith was sitting, her head in her hands. What happened next is where the story gets controversial, and I need you to understand the full context before you judge anyone involved. Diddy sat beside Faith on the small couch in the vocal booth. The space was intimate, designed for one person, so they were shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. He handed her tissues and waited while she composed herself. "Christopher wouldn't want you to carry this guilt," he said softly. "He loved you, Faith. The fight doesn't erase that." But Faith looked at him with eyes full of pain and asked the question that would haunt both of them. Then why does it hurt so much? Why does loving someone have to come with so much pain? Have you ever been asked a question that cuts so deep you feel it in your soul? That's what Diddy experienced in that moment. Because he was asking himself the same question about his friendship with Biggie, about the guilt he carried, about the love that now felt like a burden. And in that moment of shared vulnerability, something shifted between them. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was something deeper and more dangerous. Recognition. They saw their own pain reflected in each other's eyes, and suddenly they weren't alone anymore. But recognition can be intoxicating, can't it? When you've been drowning in isolation, finding someone who truly understands can feel like salvation. The boundaries that had kept them at a professional distance began to crumble that night. Instead of producer and artist, they became two people clinging to each other in a storm of grief. Instead of widow and best friend, they became confidants, sharing secrets they couldn't tell anyone else. And this is where I need to address something crucial. What you're hearing isn't a story about betrayal or scandal. Not yet. This is a story about human beings pushed to their emotional limits, making choices that seemed necessary for survival in the moment, but would cost them dearly later.